Hey everybody, Fletcher Stump here, welcome back to Radioactive Inc. and to What You Need to Hear. So, sit down class, shut up, and today you're going to learn something. So, what our topic for today is about our country's, our national debt, our deficit that, is around 20 trillion at this stage. Now, when you talk about this, a lot of people say, oh, it's a lot of money. But a lot of people don't really, they can't put it into a figure because it's a lot of money. So, as a representation, think of it like this. If you took our deficit, put it into individual $1 bills and began stacking it, just putting it into like individual stacks and then piling them up, it would be almost as tall as the Empire State Building. That's a lot of money. So, initially, the issue comes into play of how are we able to fix this? Most people would initially say, well, can't we borrow money from somebody else and pay them back? No, and this is why. See, over roughly about the last 12 years, America has actually borrowed so much money from other countries that there's nobody left to borrow from. We owe more money than what our deficit actually is. Now, how much more money is the question. Now, through things like Social Security, like pensions, what's the word I'm looking for? Reparation. That's what I'm looking for. Reparation. Through things like that, America owns. Well, we own a lot of debt, that's for sure, but America owes roughly around 90 trillion in, well, everything. So, that's an extra 70 trillion that you could tack onto this debt. Now, again, this is a lot of money, so let me put it into a different way of kind of scaling this. If you were to take the total gross sum from every country on the planet within a year, it would not equal 90 trillion. Maybe around like 80 trillion. That's about as close as you'd get, is around 80 trillion is the world's total gross income. Now, the real question comes in is, how do we fix this? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. But it does take outside work to implement this. Now, the answer to this is to keep the government from spending money. The issue is that over the last 12 years, our economy has not looked the greatest as it was. We've had like an increase of 1.35, which is really pathetic, considering that in around like the 80s and in like the 70s to 80s, we had like I think it was like a 5.86% economic growth, which is amazing. That means that everybody is able to make more money, everybody has money that they're able to just go out and spend freely, and this helps the economy keep rotating. Now, the problem is that when the government starts spending more money than what the economy is bringing in, there in turn lies the problem, is that there's not enough money going out and too much money coming in to this deficit. And this is how we fix the issue, is that if we can limit the government spending, then we'd actually be able to fix it in a lot shorter time than what most people think. The thing is that if we take what the hawk in my throat, I'm sorry. If we take the total amount of what people actually make here in the country, the gross amount, it would only take about 5 years, maybe 6 at the most, to completely wipe away the deficit, including that 90 trillion. It would take a lot less time than what people really think. But that comes into the issue of we have to limit the government spending, and then once we have it fixed, we have to ensure that the government does not spend more than the economy can handle. This is how the issue comes into play. People start writing these blank checks and suddenly there's a lot more damage that is being done. Now, I mean, and you could see it mostly in our military defense spending. I think it's like 56% of our national budget goes into defense spending, which is why we get a lot of stuff that's really, really cool, but we don't really need. Like our new our F-35s. Now, you know, this isn't classified or anything. You can look this information up online, so don't worry. But like our F-35s cost $1.35 trillion to make, and I think we have like 6 of them right now. Now, don't get me wrong, they're really cool, but we don't need them. So why build them in the first place? You could have taken that money to soup up every other, you know, jet that we have within our arsenal. And that would have been a much better spending usage, considering there's a lot more older jets than there are of these newer ones. Now, that also becomes a problem. Is like if we do limit the government spending, there's less money going to things like education and you know, again, these social securities, these pensions, things along these lines. But what it allows us to do is redivide the pie chart. So this way, everything is getting what it needs. This way, we can bring back things like art programs in school for, you know, younger children. You know, recess can be like an actual intuitive part. We can pay teachers more. We can have more teachers in schools, smaller classroom sizes. So what it comes down to really is that if the American people are willing to kind of step up and be like, hey, this is what we need to do, and you guys need to do this. If you're not willing to, then we'll go ahead and elect somebody who is on board with this, and will help us to decrease the deficit that we owe, so this way the economy can start flourishing again. We can actually have jobs. There'll be a need for these places that have to downsize because their supply isn't in, you know, high demand right now, so they have to downsize in order to help save themselves money. And I think that's what a lot of people like gloss over. They see these big numbers and they don't understand like the scaling size. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling people dumb. That's not what I'm doing. But I mean, if you hear $20 trillion, you know that's a lot of money. But it's not exactly something that you could put to a scale just right there on the spot. And I think that's where a lot of people get this turn off, because it's like, well, how do we fix something that seems that big? But the answer's a lot simpler than you think. We just have to start working together on this. This takes the effort of everyone. It really takes the effort of everyone. There's like what, millions of people living in this country? I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot of people living in this country. I'm pretty sure that if we all decide to do this together, that we really can. And in 5 to 6 years, we'd have an economy that is strong enough of when it was, you know, like 2 decades, or, you know, 2-3 decades ago. We'd have a very, very powerful economy, and we wouldn't have to worry so much about all of these things, like, you know, the price. And here's another big thing, is that people think that if you increase the amount of money that people are making, that taxes have to come in to equate for that, and the price of everything else goes up. That's not true, but I will cover that in another episode. Of that, I can assure you. But I do believe that's about as much rambling as I'm going to do for this. So I hope that you enjoyed. Leave me a like, leave me your thoughts down there in the comments section. Also, don't forget to go back and check out the other What You Need to Hear videos. As you can see, they're a little bit more somber these days than how I started out. But until then, everybody, I'm Fletcher Stump with Radioactive Inc., signing off.